Welcome to the Sleep Dives channel. In this explainer, we're diving straight into pages 71 to 105. We'll be exploring the very heartbeat of how organizations learn, the kind of environment they need to really thrive, and those all-important first moves you can make to start a real transformation. It's the big question, isn't it? Why do some organizations just seem to adapt and grow, while others get completely stuck in their ways? The secret, as we're about to see, isn't just about working harder or hiring smarter people. It's about learning better. And that all begins with understanding the fundamental engine that actually drives all learning, whether it's for just one person or a huge company. And that engine, well, you can picture it as a wheel. We're not talking about a one-off training day or a weekend seminar here. The wheel of learning is a really powerful model that helps us see learning as a continuous looping process, a kind of rhythm that the most effective teams have absolutely mastered. These stages flow in a really powerful sequence. It all starts with reflecting, just looking back on something you did and asking, what was I really thinking? What beliefs were driving me? Then you move to connecting, coming up with new ideas based on what you just reflected on. From there, you're deciding, picking a specific way forward. And finally, you get to doing, actually performing the task, but, and this is key, with an experimental mindset. Then you loop right back to reflecting on that new action. And here's the paradox. Teams that get this rhythm down actually learn faster, precisely because they appear to be moving more slowly and thoughtfully. And this shows so clearly how the whole cycle scales up. An individual's private reflection becomes a team's public reflection, where everyone's assumptions are out on the table. Connecting ideas becomes the creation of shared meaning, deciding turns into joint planning, and doing becomes coordinated action. So here's the crucial point. So many teams try to jump straight to planning and doing. They completely skip the two most important stages, public reflection and building shared meaning. And without those, the wheel just can't turn. But of course, a wheel can't just spin in a vacuum. It needs the right environment. For a learning organization, it's the leaders who create this space. They do it by cultivating what the source calls leadership fields. It's this unseen but very real pattern of influence that affects how everybody behaves. And building this field has almost nothing to do with that classic flashy charisma we think of. This quote is about a leader who was actually pretty quiet, almost mousy, yet he inspired incredible loyalty and excitement. Why? Because his power came from the clarity of his vision and his deep, deep attention to detail, both physical things like the layout of a room and emotional things. He created a field that drew people in, rather than just telling them what to do. Now, a key part of this field is intimacy. In a business context, this doesn't mean invading anyone's privacy. It's much simpler. It just means creating an environment that feels safe enough for honest information to flow. It's the willingness to say what you actually think about an idea, to admit you're not sure, or to even talk about your own failures. This kind of intimacy builds incredible trust, and it cuts out all that wasted energy spent on second-guessing and office politics. The other component is shared authority, and this is a really big shift in thinking. It moves us away from that traditional model where the boss has to carry the burden of every tough call all by themselves. Shared authority means the whole team is mutually responsible for the results. They become co-creators. This doesn't mean every single decision is made by committee, but it does mean that for the really critical decisions, you have to involve the people who are going to be affected and held accountable. So how do you actually start doing this? Well, this gives us a fantastic starting point. You can begin by sharing vital information that used to be kept private. Make a real deliberate effort to share the credit for the team's work. You can explicitly reward people for being open and honest even when it's uncomfortable. And maybe the most powerful one, actually hold discussions about the relationships themselves. Create the space to talk about how you all work together. So we've covered the what, that's the wheel of learning, and the where, the environment of intimacy and shared authority. So now we get to the how. Where on earth do you even begin this kind of journey? The key thing to remember is there's no single roadmap. The right entry point really depends on your current situation. If your organization is already pretty open, starting with a shared vision could work wonders. If you're in highly analytical, numbers-driven culture, maybe a deep system study is the best way in. If one particular team is just not working, maybe you start right there and focus on fixing the relationships. Or you could take a problem that just never seems to go away and use that as a lever to analyze the whole system. The strategy has to fit the context. So let's just pause on that for a moment. Think about your own team or your own organization. Its culture, its strengths, its nagging problems. Which of these doors feels like it's already a little bit open? Which path seems like the most natural place for you to begin? I mean it, really think about that because the answer, that's your first move. Okay, theory is one thing, but putting it into practice is everything. So let's boil all of this down into a simple, actionable experiment you can start running for the next 30 days just to see what starts to shift. Okay, here it is. First, just observe. In your team meetings, which stage of the learning wheel do you always seem to rush past? Is it the reflection bit, the connecting part? Just notice the pattern. Second, practice. In just one meeting, take a small risk. Share one honest opinion or feeling you'd normally keep to yourself. And third, find a partner. The stress of trying to create change can be huge. Find one trusted colleague to talk with. Now, the goal isn't to just dump your stress on them. That just shifts the problem. The goal is to process it together, to turn that raw frustration into focused, creative energy for change. So, to wrap it all up, we've really explored three foundational pillars here. First, you have to master the rhythm of learning, that constant cycle of reflection and action. Second, you have to cultivate the right environment, a space of intimacy and shared authority. And third, you need to look at your reality and make a conscious, strategic first move. And that brings us to our final question. Forget about transforming the whole organization for just a moment. Think about your team, right now. What is the one turn of the wheel, one moment of real reflection, one new connection, one brave decision that you need to make first? Because starting right there, that could change everything.